Hi, everybody. Is this thing on? Okay. My name is Margie, and I am here to talk to you today about a concept that I've been interested in for almost a decade now. I've been studying it. And that concept is empathy. And before we get into empathy, I'd like to connect you with a group of people that I feel connected with. Am I supposed to go? Okay. And that is the deaf population. I grew up in a home where my mom was an interpreter for the deaf. My parents are aging now, so the hearing loss population is something that's really been on my mind. And so I'm hoping to empathically connect you to this people group so that you can hopefully connect with them and feel motivated to act on their behalf or advocate. So if you wouldn't mind humoring me, taking a few seconds to read these stats. Okay, if you wouldn't mind now, I'd like you to meet one person who's affected by this.
It's like so close. There you go. We're not right over it. There you go.
It's beeping.
So now technically your device is on. Can you tell? Oh, that's exciting.
So I give this example. The truth is, I'm not really here to talk to you about the deaf community. I'm sure you can guess by now. But what I hope to show you through this example is that the process of empathy is rarely incited through information and almost 100% incited through the heart. And when you enter through the heart, you are 100% more motivated and more interested in the statistics and the information behind any sort of thing going on in this world. Empathy is a term that's been on the lips of healthcare providers, social scientists, neurologists. The president is talking about the empathy gap. Hollywood, Monica Lewinsky just did a TED talk on empathy. And if you don't believe me that this is a term that people are talking about, which I'm sure you all have heard it anyway, maybe you can take a little mental field trip with me back to the Super Bowl commercials of 2015. Yeah, so this to me was evidence that marketers are picking up that they can brand associate and empathically connect you to their brand through the heart. And it looks like they're going a little bit too far, but nonetheless, you can see that culture is catching on to enter and connect you empathically through your heart. So what is empathy? Empathy is a dual process function that requires both information and emotions. It comes in through the head and also through the heart in order to connect you with a different person who you have something in common with or maybe nothing in common with. But you have to understand, with the understanding that we will never fully know what it's like to be another human being. Science supports this as well. So when you measure empathy, it is equal parts head, cognitive, and equal parts affective, which is emotion. So when you take a test to see how empathic you are, those are the two things they're measuring. This concept has been talked about as far back as Aristotle. He talked about it as pity. That word took on sort of a negative, condescending connotation, and so literature started to use sympathy right around this time, but sympathy overcorrected and got more at the heart aspect of empathy. And that became a problem because scientists know now it's a dual process function. Now, what I think the future of empathy is, and what I think millennials know intuitively, is that the future of this term is going to be a whole new word, and I've been calling it efficacious empathy or empathy in action, because although, yes, we are interested in the internal dispositions that make someone care about another human being, we're more interested in what that looks like when it's played out in authentic, thoughtful, careful action, right? We can have good feelings all day long, but unless that manifests itself in something positive, then I think you guys already know this, but what's kind of the point? And I do think millennials are poised to be the most empathic generation to ever, I believe this from the bottom of my heart, to ever walk the earth. But you face one problem. The internet changed everything. And we are jamming information down the heads of millennials and not creating any sort of institution to support the heart maturation or the heart growth and to encourage you in that way. This is where I got that picture. I thought it was kind of funny. So let me talk to you a little bit more through another example. Maybe you guys know this gentleman. This is Timmy. Timmy is a millennial, which means he falls between the ages of 12 and 32-ish. He's actually 22 right now. A recent Boston University grad, a wonderful human being. I met him when he was in high school. He is a complete goofball, and he's a dear friend of mine. By the way, there's not many non-millennials in this audience, but if you're out there, you should make friends with more millennials, because this is what it looks like when they take pictures of you. And this is what it looks like when you take pictures of you. So for the Instagram filters alone, like, love a millennial today. So Timmy and I met because he started to get involved in an organization I helped found and also lead. It's called Invisible Children. Invisible Children, maybe some of you have heard of it, did education and civilian protection in East Africa, and we also did large-scale civic mobilization events for this issue. We made hundreds of movies. We put on lobby days. We had rallies. We had people sleeping in the streets. And if you don't have a memory of Invisible Children, then perhaps you'll remember one of our most recent videos, and that was Kony 2012. Kony 2012 to me is the biggest piece of evidence that I can hold up to people to show them of the kinetic potential energy of the millennial generation. When we founded Invisible Children in 2005, the UN called this issue that we were talking about the most neglected human rights crisis in the world. And just 7 years later, millennials mobilized to make Kony a household name. Hundreds of millions of people have seen and passed on this video. If you have seen Kony 2012, then you have also seen the controversy that went along with it. I can tell you personally, it hurt, it was brutal, and it came from every angle imaginable. And I had to stand up on a lot of panels and do a lot of interviews to defend the organization, to give the larger context to the people who only saw the 30-minute film and didn't know it had been a 10-year organization that had been doing work for a long time. And Timmy came with me to one of those panels, and he sat in the audience, and we walked in, and we knew the room was critical, just the energy in it. It wouldn't have mattered what I said that morning because they were coming at me. So after a rough morning, they opened it up to Q&A, and Timmy, 20 at the time, bravely approached this panel of PhDs and raised his question, and it was the million-dollar question. Timmy said, okay, so I hear you, and if you know Timmy, he's like the sweetest human being in the world. There's not a bit of guile in him, so this wasn't a trapping question. He said, okay, I hear you, but I've been involved in this organization for 6 years. I've studied this issue for just as long. I've lived in the region. I have friends there. We're friends on Facebook if you want to see. I care, I'm motivated, and I hear you saying I shouldn't get involved in this way. So in what way should I get involved? Pin drop. Except for I was smiling so wide, I'm sure it was audible. I would like high five him right there in the crowd. But what Timmy captured in that simple question was that somehow with all this information, we've created a bottleneck to empower the millennial generation to be all that they can be and to solve the 21st century problems that y'all are inheriting because of other generations. And he pointed out to me that the new barrier for entry is now expertise. And that makes me furious because it's not fair and it's not even true. Like, what person on that panel, including myself, started their activist life cycle as an expert? You start at the beginning and you move up and you learn along the way. It made me so angry. Every time a millennial enters into the activist pipeline, this is my experience and also what I've been studying, is they're slapped with the label Slacktivist. Even like the Ice Bucket Challenge, that made me almost more mad than Kony 2012. Who cares? People were dumping ice on themselves and people were calling people who participated in this Slacktivists. Do you know how much money was generated on account of this campaign? It was brilliant. But they're slapped back behind their desk and done all but cyberbullied into submission so that we can cram more information into their head, which, like I said before, is not even scientifically accurate. We talk about this in empathy research, that you need equal parts intellect and emotive action, and emotive heart action. So if you're just cramming information into your head, you're not going to become an empathic person. Does this make sense? Think of it like your health. I joined a new gym the other day, and I sat down with a trainer, and he asked me 4 questions. He said, how is your sleep? He said, I'm going to go back here. How is your sleep? What's your calorie intake like? What are in those calories, and what's your activity level? Well, what if I came back to him and said, well, I watch my calorie intake like a hawk, and I am a master sleeper. But this is the first time I've been off my couch in 3 months, and all those calories I'm watching, yeah, I get my calories from Skittles. He's probably not going to tell me I'm a very healthy person, correct? So in the same way, if we don't let millennials act and foster their heart and what inspires them, then they're not going to grow in their empathic levels. And that brings us back to this point. So let me tell you one more story. This one's about a gentleman named William Hornaday, and I think this picture is hilarious. He moved to the Great Plains in 1880, and he fell in love with the ecology there, but specifically the buffalo. That is his pet buffalo, Sally. Isn't that kind of silly? So he fell so in love with this area, but he found a huge problem in the poachers were threatening the life of this buffalo altogether. And he saw them disappearing in droves. So he became a very vocal activist in Washington, D.C. But progress wasn't happening quick enough, and the buffalo population was dying. So he hatched this brilliant idea. He went back to the plains, shot the most beautiful specimen of buffalo he could find, stuffed it, and became a taxidermist. Yeah, a little counterintuitive, right? So his idea was to set up a museum to close the empathic gap between poachers and the public and the buffalo, so to kind of create a critical mass of people who could lobby on his behalf and help save the buffalo. And the weird thing is, it kind of worked. He teamed up with Theodore Roosevelt, and they created the first conservancy of buffalo. They were able to introduce them back in the wild, and it is arguable that he is responsible for saving of this entire species of animals. Now hear me when I say, I am not advocating that we encourage millennials to go out into the public and do the modern day 21st century equivalent of shooting up a bunch of buffalo. But what I am saying is his heart was moved, and as a result, he went out and he did the thing that he conceived of. As he continued down his activist pipeline, he started advocating against taxidermy. He realized the fault in his actions, but at the same time, there was a positive outcome to this. And so I guess what I'm saying is heart stimulation is vital to the lifeline and the pipeline of millennial activism, and so is heart action. And if we stifle the heart action of millennials, I don't think we're going to be able to hit the pipeline. And just like the Grinch, his heart did not grow until he was allowed to act. And I think supporting millennials in their heart activation is going to meet the levels of intellectual information understanding and be the spark that actually makes you guys the most empathic generation to absolutely ever walk the earth. Thank you.